Hello, everybody. Welcome. So happy to have you here. My name is Lisa Reichert. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Career and Professional Development Lead within the People and Organization Development team, which is part of UC Berkeley People and Culture. And I am connecting from my remote office at home here in Oakland, California, where it's just lovely today. And I am so glad that you are here for today's Now Encore Series workshop, which is Connect, Then Lead, presented by Carolyn Godfrey. And this is truly an encore presentation, as Carolyn also presented on this topic at our In Person Now conference this past June. And she has generously offered to present once again today, showing us how to build connection first, then lead effectively, whether you are in person or online. And so let me tell you a little bit more about Carolyn. Carolyn Godfrey, a former leader in tech and environmental engineering, discovered that great leadership isn't just about expertise, it's about emotional intelligence and the courage to lead with heart while getting results that matter. In 2001, Carolyn founded Evolve Consulting to help others do the same. And with over 20 years of experience, a master's in HR and organization development, and an International Coaching Federation professional coaching credential, she helps leaders rise with clarity, compassion, confidence, and integrity, and creating a ripple effect of good across organizations. Welcome, Carolyn. Thank you so much for your time today, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. And thanks to everybody for joining today and having me back. I had a great time in June when I gave this talk. So, Lisa's going to be helping me with the back end, running the Zoom, and I'm going to be focusing on the content. And since this workshop is about connecting and leading, we encourage you to participate because in coaching, it's a learning modality. So it's all about practice, participating, getting it in the muscle to really understand these soft skills that we're going to be talking about today. Let's see. So my intention is for you and for all of my clients to be more successful in the workplace and in life in general because these skills are transferable. And for organizations to build trusting environments so people can do their best work. And I forgot to say, I am here in my home as well in Berkeley, California. Okay, let's look at, oops, here we go. Here's our agenda. I'm going to move everybody over. We're going to talk about the first principles of leadership and influencing. So leadership and influencing is a big topic. And so we're going to start from the beginning. And leadership, I believe, is everybody's responsibility in some context, whether at work, whether at home, because leadership is a construct of behaviors that help us achieve our goals and usually with other people. So, how do we enlist the support of other people through influencing? Leadership is also the exercise of power. And according to Dr. Keltner at UC Berkeley, who wrote The Power Paradox, How to Gain and Lose Influence, he said that there are many principles to power, but two principles really are aligned with what we're talking about today. And one is the ability to influence, and the other is the ability to alter other people's state. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. And I'm also going to bring in a lot of data and research that substantiate this topic because I've been talking about this and working with mostly technical leaders for at least 2 decades or more. And when I would teach them how to manage and how to influence people, I'd get a lot of eye rolling. And I then went on a quest to find the data and the research that substantiates what we're going to talk about today. And when I finally included that in my work, I had some managers say, well, with all this science, it really takes the touchy-feely out of it. So I hope that you will think the same. We're going to talk about the impact of leadership behaviors in the workplace because I want to create some awareness of what behaviors take you in and out of your ability to influence other people. And maybe you'll see some of these behaviors in some of your colleagues, or maybe even from yourself. So, how could you be better at influencing other people and helping other people be better at communicating and working together? The power of the nonverbal. Our nonverbal communication impacts the way we think, feel, and act. And it also impacts the way other people think, feel, and act. So it's important to understand how that relates to our ability to influence. At UCLA, they did a study in the 90s that said 93% of the impact of our communication is our nonverbal. 38% is our voice tone, and 55% is our physiology or behaviors. Only 7% are the words we say. So it's really important in influencing that that's where we start. We're going to talk about managing and shifting our emotional state. So our emotions are the ultimate resource. It helps us connect with people, build trusting relationships, and also helps us focus on what's important. So we need to be able to manage our emotions. And we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and how it relates to how good we are at managing our emotions and that of other people. Um, Last, we're going to talk about establishing rapport. And rapport is our ability to connect with somebody, to help them feel understood, to make our conversation go easier, and to open them up to what we're going to say to them. So take a moment and reflect on somebody you've recently had an interaction with. Just take one moment, like maybe the last person you spoke with that you actually saw, not just on the phone. So just take a moment and think about that. Now, think about what was your impression of them? How were they holding their head? What was their facial expressions? What was their voice tone? And what does that have to do with leadership? So, according to behavioral scientists, we make snap judgments about people all the time. And when we do, we're looking for two key traits of social judgment: warmth and strength. Warmth is empathy and compassion, and strength is confidence and competence. And they are so overwhelmingly influential in how we judge our other people and our leaders that they account for over 90% of all the positive and negative impressions we form of people. And we absolutely need to display these traits to influence in just the right way. It's hardwired in our neurology because it answers two questions. What are your intentions, and can you act on them? And it also represents two motivations in human nature, which is getting along versus getting ahead. And you see that play out in organizations all the time. So before people decide what they think of your message, they're deciding what they think of you. Here's a process I call the science of influence. And our emotions drive our behaviors. That's why it's so important to be able to manage our emotional state, because we want to drive the right behaviors. And if you want to influence, it has to project warmth and strength with rapport in just the right way. And because 93% of the impact of our communication to other people is nonverbal, we have to do it with our nonverbal communication. And when we do, we will generate trust and emotional safety, which will allow us to empower and influence others. So, this process is easy to understand, but not so easy to do. So, what's really important is how do we do it and be congruent? Because you can't really fake warmth and strength, right? If you're upset or if you're afraid, it's really hard to fake it. So, how do we put ourselves in that kind of state? So, if you please put in the chat, how many of you are challenged in certain circumstances to manage your emotions? Yes or no? What do you see in there, Lisa?
I see a string of yeses. Yes,
Well,
we
I'm
can
with
all
you.
relate.
I'm with you. I'm also a person in certain circumstances that I have to practice as well to manage my state. Okay.
Yes, as Laura said, we are not alone. We're all saying yes.
So, the important thing is we're trying to build trust. And there's some research by Paul Zak. He did a 20-year longitudinal study on trust and with a lot of different organizations. And this is what he found. So, a trusting culture builds empowerment and engagement. And there's 74% less stress, 106% more energy at work, 50% higher productivity, 13% fewer sick days, 76% more engagement, 29% more satisfaction with their lives, and 40% less burnout. And, this is not the only study. Right before I did the talk in June, I was reading something that TikTok had reviewed 50,000 posts that were complaints about people's workplaces. And two of the highest complaints were hashtag bad boss and hashtag toxic workplace culture. So this is still up for people. I don't think organizations realize how important building trust is since people still are feeling the same way. Behavioral economists also measured trust in terms of how much money people would give if they felt somebody is trustworthy. So what they did was they had subjects allocate to an endowment and found that they gave more money to people they trusted just by glancing at their face. So, also reinforcing the fact that body language, facial expression is very important on influencing. So, now we're going to pivot. We're going to talk about workplace behaviors. And is it better to be feared or loved? Machiavelli wrote the book The Prince, and he said it's better to be both. But if you got to pick one, it's better to be feared. So the lion is not a person, it's an archetype that represents patterns of behavior. And this particular pattern is overusing strength. So if you'd put in the chat, please, why do people get promoted? Why do people get promoted? What are you seeing there, Lisa?
I'm seeing it depends.
It depends.
They go after it and put themselves out there.
Yeah.
Good relationships with high level management, whim,
Okay.
speaking up for themselves, assumptions they can achieve goals of organization, nepotism, who you know, networking, initiative, well
Yeah.
liked,
Yeah.
and another it depends. They are good at showcasing their strengths,
Yes.
good at people politics.
So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons you are right, but the research says a lot of the reasons why people get promoted is because they are subject matter experts, because they are perceived as really competent, they're assertive, they're proactive. However, and a lot of times they're individual contributors who are really great at what they do. And so they put them in a management or leadership position. But what got you there doesn't always help you with when you're managing a group. And I've worked with a lot of people with these patterns. What happens? So, what do people say about somebody who is overusing their strength? What do people say they're doing? You put that in the chat if you'd like. What are you seeing there, Lisa?
I'm waiting for, let's see. Okay, they're coming in now. Steamrolling, micromanaging, it's a crutch, arrogance, compensating for lack of skill, overbearing.
So, I do a lot of assessments on the leaders I work with, and when they're evaluating their leadership, if somebody overuses their strength, this is what they say. They're very directive, they're always leading with their solutions. They don't like it when you disagree. They need to listen more, and they're not a team player. And so, a lot of times, these behaviors generate fear with the groups that they work with. And what happens to group function when people are leading with too much strength? You have any ideas? You can put them in the chat.
So I'm seeing innovation can stop,
Yes.
risk taking stops,
Yes.
hurts teamwork,
Yep.
breaks down camaraderie, the confidence of others may go down,
Yes.
fear and anxiety can develop.
Yeah. And fear and anxiety then reduces our cognitive ability to think. So you get less good solutions. The data show that people who are there was one study that looked at 50,000 leaders and found that leaders who are highly disliked, the chances of them being perceived as good leaders is 1 in 2,000. And that if somebody continues to overuse their strength and not build enough trust, they're also open to harsh reprisal as well. Organizational psychologists asked leaders if you had to choose a kind of training, either hard skills or soft skills, hard skills being like time management, what would you choose? And the majority of the leaders said they would choose hard skills for themselves and soft skills for other people. And so I always laugh at that because it just proves the point that people really want trusting leaders, leaders they can trust. But a lot of times, leaders who get promoted, feel that they need to lead with their competence. They need to be confident. They need to be the smartest person in the room. So it kind of proves that point. So let's talk about what happens when you lead with too much warmth. So the lamb, again, is an archetype of a pattern of behaviors. And when somebody leads with too much warmth, what are they doing? Please put it in the chat. Lisa.
I see that they are avoiding conflict,
Yes.
being a softie,
Yeah.
possibly wanting to be liked, being
Yes.
a pushover.
Yeah. And so
Sometimes
here's
it sets low expectations on performance,
absolutely.
trying to get people to like them. Staff takes
Mm-hmm.
advantage, not
Yes.
dealing with problems, which inevitably impacts the team downstream.
Yep.
And I see some heads nodding, yep, here too.
Yeah, so here's what I hear. They're not assertive. They avoid conflict. Somebody said that already allows poor performance. And they don't set expectations. And somebody said that as well. So, leading with warmth might engender trust in the short term, but in the long term, it can erode trust because people can't trust that they're going to tell them the truth, that they're going to give them the feedback that they need, or they're going to hold people accountable so they can do their best work. So how do people, and we already kind of talked about what happens when the group has a leader like this, right? That things just don't get done in the way they need to. And why did this happen? Leadership personality. There's a high correlation between leadership personality and business results. So, leadership personality are natural tendencies that determine effectiveness and how you will lead. And I do all kinds of assessments on leadership personality because it helps create awareness, both what are person's strengths and what are their weaknesses. And it's important to note that, you know, if you understand what your strengths and weaknesses are and create some awareness when you're working with people, you can move the needle on some of these behaviors. Google did a study years ago, and they wanted to figure out what determined a high performing team. How could we keep creating high performing teams? Why do some teams perform better than others? And it was called Project Aristotle, and they hired a Yale researcher to look at 50 years worth of data on high performing teams. And then, since they're the king of analytics, they had a lot of data on their team. So, what they discovered were two things. The first thing was every member of the team took equal turns speaking. Nobody dominated the conversation. There wasn't a leader that was taking over, and nobody was sitting back, not participating. And the second thing they discovered was the members of the group had an average sense of average sensitivity, social sensitivity, so that they can intuit how people were feeling. So if somebody was looking like, they weren't too happy with the solution they just came up with, they could intuit that by their body language and, work it out with them. So what's really important to take away here is that you can understand, you know, your subject matter, you can understand time management, but the important thing is to be able to understand yourself. All right. So, one of the most important aspects of leadership personality is emotional intelligence, and that's what helps you figure out how well you'll be at managing your own emotional state, how well you be at intuiting what other people are feeling, or how you can uh, better have better awareness around what you're feeling. So emotional intelligence is the ability to identify and manage your emotions and those of other people. Do you have the kind of empathy? Are you diplomatic? So you can, on this continuum of emotional intelligence, we have more archetypes of behaviors. And what's important here is what I'm trying to do is raise some awareness of where you might fall on this continuum and why it's important to know. So, on the outer ends are low emotional intelligence. So, I give assessments to leaders all the time to see, where are they starting from and what particular thing do they need to strengthen. And so, we already talked about the lamb. So, on the left side is warmth. And as you move towards the middle, you increase your emotional intelligence score. And the dog is somebody who is not really conflict avoidant all the time, like the lamb pattern, but under certain situations. So I had a leader I worked with once who was a great leader with his staff, but when he got into meetings with his peers or his boss, he was really quiet. And so working on how do you strengthen, bringing more strength, under those circumstances. Then we talked about the lion, and then there's the cobra. And that person or with a cobra pattern scores very low on emotional intelligence as well. And that's somebody who really is triggered very quickly and will get angry very fast and leave a lot of hard feelings in their wake. So when you know where you fall, then you can figure out how to move the needle. What does moving the needle look like? So for somebody, who is very low on either end, maybe moving the needle looks like getting a workaround. For somebody with a lamb pattern, I had someone else in between them and the staff to help because they were such a great subject matter expert because these people are top notch in their field. On the Cobra pattern, moving the needle was how can I slow down my reactivity so that I don't react? And maybe that's what we do for a whole year. I mean, it really depends. So know yourself and know that you can improve your emotional intelligence.
Carolyn, we do have a question here.
Yes.
Could you please give us a self-assessment to find out where we stand by ourselves? So how can people figure out if they're high in warmth or strength or low?
Yes. So you can take an assessment. I use Hogan assessment systems, and I find that their assessments are very rigorous. And they're the only ones when used in hiring have not been challenged in court because they use a five-factor model statistically. So that's why I use them. So you could do that. The other thing you could do is ask people who know you. You know, uh, I had a mentor who said, if three people tell you the same thing, Carolyn, maybe you better look at it. As for me, I think, I'm probably around the dog, but I was kind of lamb-like when I first started managing people. And it's a journey to really support yourself, to be grounded in your power and develop some strength. I hope that answers your question about, you can do an assessment or really people who you trust will tell you how you can improve in that way. Are there, now that we're on, let's ask some questions at this point. What other questions do you have? See anything, Lisa?
None at the moment yet. Somebody did just plus one the request for the assessment that they could also share with their teams, and so
Yes.
I can share some links in the follow-up materials, the email that I send out.
Okay.
We also do have some other workshops coming up that are self-assessments related to, like our style, like Myers-Briggs, and also the strong interest inventory. So I'll put links to those in the follow-up email as well.
Great. The Hogan that I use to evaluate emotional intelligence, there are a lot of different ones. Ones are self-assessment, and this particular one is how you're hardwired. So the way the questions are asked, um, determines how people see you in the workplace, but you're answering the questions. And the reason why I chose that is because I want to really see people's tendency, not what they think their tendency is. So just something to keep in mind. A lot of assessments look at different things. There's another one I use called the WEI profile, and that measures how we react in the moment under stress with people. And it gives you different information, which is also interesting. I don't use that unless I'm in like farther down in the engagement. There's a lot of vulnerability in it, but
Mhm.
it's an also very interesting assessment as well.
Yeah, and in relation to your suggestion, like just ask people, which is great. Like you can do that informally. We also have a tool here on campus that I'll share in the follow-up materials, which is called the Focus 90. And so that's an opportunity for managers to ask their direct reports about feedback um, on how they are as a manager. So I'll share that information, and that assessment is completely voluntary. If a manager would like to engage in that, it's totally up to them. And I see we'd have one other comment in the chat, um, or the question. A question is the desired EQ position going to be somewhere in the middle of the spectrum on the current slide?
So, interestingly, a lot of this depends on job fit. If you're an individual contributor and you're not managing people, then uh, it might not matter where you fall, but the higher up in the organization you go, the more important it is. For top leaders, it can account for 80% of their success, their ability to have emotional intelligence enough to influence and create psychological safety inside the organization. So it depends on job fit. Any other questions? Okay, so we've talked about how important managing our emotions are and how we can do that and express warmth and strength if we're right in the motion and we're in the right emotional state using our body language. We've talked about, leadership personality, and so I'm going to ask you to reflect on this question. And all I want you to do, maybe jot a few notes about it. So, exploring your leadership, in what situation do you want to either express more strength or more warmth? How is your current behavior not working for you or your group or your organization? And what positive outcomes are you hoping for changing your behavior in this situation? So this reflect, if you think about situations where you might want more confidence or you might want to project more compassion, like you'll start sensing a theme. So take a few minutes, please, and jot down a few notes because we're going to be talking about this later on. Just take another 30 seconds or more to finish up. You can. I can see people are still working on it. I'll give you a little more time.
We had somebody share their reflections. So
Great. Feel
thank you
free to
for
share.
sharing, and I will share them with you, Carolyn.
Great.
More strength in decision making and more warmth in communication. Current behavior is misunderstood to be seen as having value to the department and not marginalized. And I'm just like, I'm not stating people's names here because we're being recorded. So I'm just sharing the comments.
Great. Any other? Feel free to share. It's optional. Share if you like.
Nothing else yet. Okay. One just in.
Okay.
My goal is to be seen as more of a trustworthy leader for the future next step of my professional ladder.
Great. Anything else?
One more. I am fast and impatient. I cannot wait. I would like to improve and learn how to listen what the others have to say, even if they are much smaller than me.
Okay. So
Or,
excellent.
or correction, slower than me, even if they are much slower than me.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Well, we're going to shift gears again. And now we're going to talk about how do we put ourselves in the right emotional state? So for those of you who want some confidence and strength, there was some research out of Princeton, and it's a very famous TED Talk. Amy Cuddy and Susan Fisk were looking at how could shifting body language change somebody's outcomes in life. And it started, well, they're social scientists that study the impact of body language on social judgment. And they noticed when their MBA students came into class, they would try to predict who was going to do well because it was based on participation. And so those that walked in assertively, looking at their body language, they're going to do well in class. And so they thought, but how could we help everyone do well in class? Give them the confidence they need. So what they did was they created three groups. They took a third and had them shift their physiology into a power pose like Superman there. And another third were doing disempowering poses. And a disempowering pose, you can't see my full body, but it's really going inward. It's like getting small. That's a disempowering pose. And then one was a control group, and they had them do these poses for a couple of minutes and then go into a panel interview process. It was supposed to be kind of stressful. And then the panel decided who they felt did the best. And they saw that the people who did the power poses were more confident in that panel interview. So one of the things that happens is when we are in our strength and are in our confidence, we're less fearful. We shed our inhibitions, and it can increase performance. But we can't walk around like Superman. So, in a practical sense, what does confidence look like? Well, confidence looks like being very symmetrical in your body language. your chin's down, your voice is lower. You can think about watching the news anchors, and when they're presenting a very serious story, their voice is low, their chin is down, and they are very symmetrical, even with their hand gestures. You want to be more in your confidence. Make sure your toes are pointing in the same direction and you're pretty straight. So, for those of you who might lead with too much strength, perhaps you want to bring in some warmth. So, what does the physiology of warmth look like? So, you can see this woman different than strength. If you notice, she's asymmetrical. You know, she's on one hip, you can see from one of the photographs, and her head's to the side and her chin's up a little bit, which raises your voice. And so leading with warmth was going to foster social bonds, cooperation, and trust. There's a neurophysiologist who did some research on this body language and how it impacts optimal performance. And she said, when she calls it the Kate Winslet pose. So in Titanic, do you remember, with her and Leonardo DiCaprio and her arms are out and her head's up? That's also supposed to drive warmth. And I'll tell you how it works. I call it the biochemistry of leadership. So basically, when we shift our physiology, it drives neurochemicals in our body. And people who are in a warmth pose, this Claire Dale is her name, the neurophysiologist. She studies the neurochemistry of embodiment for optimal performance and what are the chemicals that get released for different types of, emotional, to display the emotion and behaviors that will give you the best performance. And for oxytocin is the hormone for warmth, and it's the hormone for enables us to form attachments, to bond with people. Amy Cuddy also and Susan Fisk also did measure hormones for that research they did. So before the power pose and the disempowering pose, and after, and found that those who did the pose had higher levels of testosterone. And testosterone is the hormone of risk taking, competitiveness, being assertive, and cortisol is the hormone for stress. They had lower cortisol. They also looked at, in their executive MBA program, did some measurements against the general population and found that if you're in a high leadership position, that they had higher levels of testosterone and lower levels of cortisol than the general population. So, and what does that do? In general, if you don't feel threatened, you're more able to feel in control and also bring in warmth. And that's what they found. The other pose or physiological thing that Claire Dale showed is you can be in a power pose to increase your confidence and strength, but you can also, if you take your fist and put it into your palm and squeeze really, really hard so that all the muscles in your back are are tight, and you do that, that will also increase your testosterone as well. So, when we shift our physiology, We drive biochemicals in our body that help us feel differently. So that is why our nonverbal communication impacts the way we feel and think and act, and that of other people as well. So we're going to play with this a little. And first, you know, all emotions and behaviors are made up of three parts working together. And that's patterns of physiology. We talked about it. It releases biochemical processes in our body. Patterns of mental focus, which is how we experience the world, like our values, our beliefs, and our emotional habits. And patterns of language, that is how we express our experience of the world to ourselves and to other people. And you can use one or more of these patterns to drive the emotion that you want, and they're mutually reinforcing. So, when I've worked with different leaders, I'm often having them use this to drive a different emotional state. So, somebody with the Cobra pattern, she thought about her baby, and then she would just lean back in her chair in meetings on one hip and tilt her head, make sure her chin was high, so that she could regulate her emotions instead of reacting. It bought time, it slowed down her emotions. I worked with somebody who was leading with way too much warmth, and every time she spoke, she was very warm and she was, very asymmetrical, and it really impacted her credibility. So, what we did was first make sure she was symmetrical when she spoke, lowered her chin, but also she would think of a song that made her feel really powerful and strong. And she would like listen to that in her mind. But back in the 60s, President John F. Kennedy had a speechwriter. Her name was Dorothy Sarnoff, and she intuitively understood that the president, before he spoke, needed to be in states of warmth and strength. So she said, Mr. President, before you go out on stage, I want you to say to yourself, I'm happy to be here and I'm glad you're here. And I want you to say that to yourself over and over and over and over again until you really feel that you're happy, you feel warm, you feel you're going to go out, you're really going to connect with your audience. And then she said, but you also need to be perceived as credible and, confident. So I want you to say to yourself, I know what I know. And say that to yourself over and over again until you really feel grounded in your confidence. And he'd go out and give his speeches. And if anybody has seen and heard one of John F. Kennedy's speeches, you could tell he was a really great orator. So we're going to play with this, and this is what we're going to do. So remember that questionnaire, those questions you answered? We're going to use those. And the first thing we're going to do is answer this question. We'll put you into a breakout room with two or three people, and you're going to discuss the answer to this question first. In what situation do you want to express more strength or express more warmth? And how is your current behavior not working for you, your group, or your organization? So go back to, the notes that you took there. But before you do, I want you to have a sense of what it's like to be able to drive your emotions to express warmth. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to prompt you to be shift your physiology into warmth. And then we're going to put you in the breakout. Ready?
Excuse me, I want to interrupt. So
Yeah.
breakouts are optional. I'm seeing people leave. I guess we're introducing the breakout. And I just want you to know, if you don't want to go into the breakout, if you're not in a place, where you can share or talk or in a headspace, the breakout is optional. You don't have to leave. You can hang out here in the main room with us. So just want to let you know that. So don't leave if you don't have to. If you're,
Sorry
but
about
it
that. I should
still
have said
still
that.
allows you to be here.
I'm used to
So
doing this live mostly, so everybody's just doing it.
no
So,
worries,
okay.
no worries. I just
Thanks,
want to
Lisa.
manage people's like cortisol levels here. Let you
Yeah.
know it's optional.
I
Okay.
have to perform.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and also we encourage you to do it, stretch yourself. You're here to, learn about connecting and leading. And if not, and if you're not in a place to do that, absolutely okay. And also, so if you are not going into a breakout room, just hang out here. I'm putting everybody into breakout rooms. So you'll be invited. Just don't go. Stay in the main room. And then if I see somebody's in a breakout room by themselves, I'll match them and move you into a breakout room with someone else. So that might just take me half a minute to do that organizing. There's no other high tech way to have people stay and match people who want to go yet here in Zoom. So, okay, with that, sorry, Carolyn, what else would you like to say about this
Um,
activity?
so let's hold it lightly. This is what I always say to my clients when we're doing things like this. Hold it lightly. It's about getting it in the muscle, having an experience of it so you can access it easily when you need it. So I want you to say to yourself, I'm happy to be here and I'm glad you're here. And you can close your eyes if you want. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you're here. And I want you to say to yourself over and over again. And as you do, you can turn it up like it's a radio, like it's the volume inside yourself. Just say it to yourself. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you're here. Feel the way it feels in your body. Keep saying it to yourself. Keep saying it to yourself. I'm happy to be here and I'm glad you're here. And really feel it. And Lisa, put them in a breakout room and answer this question, please.
All right, great. You'll have 6 minutes total. I'll give you a 3 minute warning, and then 1 minute you'll see the warning to come back. There'll be 2 to 3 of you in a room and have fun. Here we go.
So hold that feeling.
Okay, everyone is in a room with at least one person for those who are in breakout rooms. I'm starting the clock now.
Great. How's it going, Lisa, so far?
I think it's going great, Carolyn. I think you're doing a great job and love
Thanks.
that how everybody's sharing their questions and comments too. So thank you all for being here. And yeah, if you have any questions you want to put while we're hanging out here in the main room, please feel free to put them in the chat. What I can also do is I'm going to pause the recording. So if we want to have some discussion here, we can do that. So let me.
Okay, well, you can share in the chat. What was your experience? What did you notice either about yourself or the other person who was speaking from this place of warmth?
Okay, so I am seeing some shares that include that our experiences, struggles were very similar. Also, maybe you can toggle back and forth between the two, warmth and strength. Mhm. So those are the two shares so far.
So just tell me yes or no. Did you notice a shift in your voice tone or your body language in any way being in a state of warmth? You can say yes or no.
I see a yes, yes, several yeses, and a
And
few more
so,
shares.
okay,
Um, we all have a desire to do our jobs well, serve the students well, and finding that balance is important to that. Also, we discussed some good ways to transition between warmth and strength in a conversation.
nice.
Can we bring more strength, warmth? Must they contradict? Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's interesting. They are kind of distinct. Here's what I find, and somebody had a question about this while the breakout was going on, is that we sometimes have a tendency to do one or the other well, and the other one maybe not as well. And when we work on integrating the one that we need more support with, like I might need more confidence or strength in certain situations. Some other people might need more warmth, that they're able to do both easier once they practice bringing in more warmth. And so we were going to put you, what I want you to experience is the contrast between the two, how you feel and what your body language is like and what you notice. Because emotional intelligence is about having the self-awareness when you're upset and angry. Oh, I'm in my strength too much, or when I'm in my warmth too much and it's not enhancing the interaction. That's what I want you to notice. Or notice what's happening for the other person. So we're going to just take a few minutes and I want you to answer the second question in the breakout if you want to be in breakout or not. And so either what situation you want to express more warmth and strength and what positive outcomes are you hoping for by changing your behavior in the situation. So take a moment and we're going to put you in an experience of strength. So I want you to say to yourself, I know what I know. I know what I know. And say it over and over and over again in your mind. Really feel what it's like to say that. When you say that to yourself, what is your internal experience? And I want you to hold on to that experience and really turn it up. I know what I know. If you would, Lisa, could you put them in the breakout? And we're
sure.
just going to give you a couple minutes to do this.
So, like 3 minutes, so 1 minute each if there's three in a room.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. And you're basically in the same rooms.
Notice
Unless
their
some,
body language. Notice what's happening for you.
okay, here we go. Everyone is back. Welcome back,
Great.
everyone.
So my intention is to give you a sense of what it's like to communicate when you're in, a different emotional state, warmth and strength. And so, anybody notice anything quickly about being in a state of strength, either from your partner or yourself? You can put it in the chat. See anything?
I see it looks like people are typing, and as soon as it comes in, I will share.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Um, Strength was harder to channel for me with one share. My partner said it made her feel lighter and more confident.
Great.
Um, those are the two shares so far.
Okay, I'm going to move on just in the interest of time, and we're going to move on to rapport, which is an extremely important skill if you want to be able to influence. So you got to be in the right emotional state and project the right body language. And the interesting part is, we can be more intentional about how we are connecting with people and how we are feeling. You can see this is Barack Obama and David Cameron on the South Lawn, and they are mirroring each other, and they're most likely doing this unconsciously because we do this unconsciously. If you ever go to a restaurant and look at people communicating with one another, they're usually matching each other. So mirroring increases receptivity and trust, and it's about matching physiology, vocabulary, voice tone, intensity. And so if you want to influence, you need to mirror where somebody is. And the fascinating part of this is our limbic systems. As human beings, we are designed so perfectly in many ways. And our limbic systems transmit signals that alter other people's hormones just by being in proximity. And we have mirror neurons in our brain. The reason why we're really unconscious about it, that capture the emotions of other people. So it's about when we copy the emotions of other people and help people by transmitting signals that shift other people's hormones. That's for the reason of bonding, belonging, and survival. So you need to mirror first and lead. So in many circumstances, you want to project trust first, warmth, but in some circumstances, when people are upset, that's not going to work. You have to meet them where they are. So years ago, I was a first-time manager and I learned these skills and I thought it was fascinating. I could actually shift somebody's emotions with my body language. So I used to practice it all the time with people who are upset at me, like my mom, my boyfriend, friends. And every time it worked. If somebody was upset, I could put them in a more calm place. So 5 years later, I'm in Alaska visiting a friend. And I rented a car and went to go see a glacier, came back, parked in the parking lot, and parking lot, unmarked places. A woman starts screaming at me that I'm in her spot. And she was very threatening. And I thought, what's going on? This is really weird. So I finally say, hey, I'm going to move my car. So I get in my car and I decided I would just move it across the street to the dirt because I didn't know what was going on. I do that. I get out of my car. This woman is standing in front of me with a shovel in her hand and she's screaming at me. And she's threatening bodily harm, and I'm like, what is going on? So all of a sudden, because I could tell this was not irrational, she was really out of her mind, really mad that I was in that spot. I started to match her intensity. And I stood in front of her and my physiology was she had a shovel, my arm was up, And all I said was yes and nod my head. I matched the intensity of voice without speaking any words, not trying to reason, and her body language. And little by little, I slowly opened up my stance, went on one hip, dropped one arm, dropped the other arm, but very slowly. And little by little, because we are designed to bond, she followed me. She matched me. So she then dropped her arm with a shovel in it. Her voice started to lower, and I waited and then said to her, I'm going to go back and into the condo now. And I did this, and she did that. I go in, I lock the door. So here's the thing. We regulate each other's emotional state. Once I was gone, she got mad again. So she went over to the door. She ripped the screen door off and took a tree trunk and shoved it in front of the door. I called the police. They talked to her, blah, blah, blah. The next day, there was a knock at the door. My friend said, oh, there's this lady is at the door again, or at the door to talk to you. And so I talked to her, and she said, the police came. I came to apologize. I'm a schizophrenic and I didn't take my medication. So we are designed to really support each other's emotions, but we have to be in the right state. And if you want to really help influence, which is what I did, I mean, I probably saved my life, but you need to first match where somebody is, and then you can move them to a more resourceful state so she could think, right? I lowered the temperature just by using my body language and voice tone. Um, and any questions?
Um, no, I don't see any questions. There are a couple comments. I also know we're past time because this was scheduled to go to 1:15. So
I'll finish
and
this
for
really.
those that need to hop off, and then Carolyn, I know you might have a few slides. So if for those that have time, if you want to hear more, ask questions, we'll finish up as well. So just wanted to share that. And thank you all for being here. It's been great to be in proximity with all of you. And Carolyn, thank you for sharing, all these great strategies to help us connect and examine how we can express more warmth and strength. Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you. So I have
And
a couple other slides if you want to see. At the end of the live now conference that I did in June, there were a lot of questions about video conferencing. So, I mean, a lot of the same principles apply, but you're looking at people's faces just like you're looking at mine. Um, one of the important things is that we need to stay present with people so that we can notice their voice tone and their body language, just as if we were in person. So don't multitask and distract yourself. And, managing your emotional state, whatever's going on in the moment, like we just talked about how you can shift your emotions if you're getting triggered in some way or you need more confidence. Because you want to stay present and keep your connection with people. Maintaining eye contact can be helpful. Notice people's facial expressions and voice tone, and remember to mirror first, and then you can lead them where they are. And I also added active listening because active listening is a great way to help manage our emotions and get us out of our head. Because sometimes we're in meetings and we're thinking about what we want to say next, right? Which takes us out of being present and connected. But if you active listen, you can't multitask. Think about what you're going to say next, or I'm feeling really bad about what they're saying. You have to focus on the other person and focus on mirroring what they're saying. Uh, that's all I have about that. And in general, this is in summary. If you have an opportunity to take an assessment or get some feedback, it's really important to know yourself. You want to really get good at influencing others. You need to have self-awareness, and you can practice that. Like What's my body language? What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling? Am I driving the wrong state? You can consider what emotional state will best serve the interaction that you're in and shift that. Focus on people's nonverbal communication and mirror that, and then you can lead people to a more receptive state, just like I did with that woman in Alaska. And remembering to balance warmth and strength. And somebody asked how to do that during a break when you guys were in breakouts. And here's what I found. That first thing is you need to understand which state you might struggle with more, be more challenged with, right? When I work with people, people will say, I'm challenged with confidence or I'm challenged with feeling compassionate. And when you practice that enough, it's a lot easier to integrate the two. And once you do that, then you can send your message. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, again, thank you. And I will go ahead and end our recording here.
And I just